May 23rd, 23. So this is a quick reflection on my daughter, Elsa's inquiry, 15-year-old. I teased the 13-year-old Ellen about has she read my Welt Slosh yet? And actually, they have looked through it, but Elsa's sort of a bit more questioning of things, wondering why we are in a world that's built, or what does it mean really to say that Welt Slosh, which is my German word. There are two German words I put together that literally mean world building, but I'm looking at this as a quality of dwelling. So we're in this world. And so I was explaining to her, and we've talked about it before, and she goes, I get it. But then she comes back and questions it a bit and say, well, what does it really mean, world building? So let's go into it. And you can find more of this writing at weltslosh.com. But instead of spelling it, you can also go to grandtourideas.com. We'll do a world tour later. So the weltslosh.com, but also grandtourideas.com. So grandtourideas.com is sort of my overall arching ideas site. Weltslosh is a paragraph link in it, but it's a quick way to find it along with my other ideas that explain my quote unquote philosophical cosmetology, the essence of exploring our quality of being and how we are being in the world that we conjecture, right? That this is an existence that we are in experiencing. So yes, we can get to the solid, physical, reality of, yeah, we're on planet Earth, we're in a solar system and existing in the universe. This is the cosmos. So in that realm, we're speaking of the hardcore elements of the MEST, matter, energy, space, and time. I use a lot of acronyms. Matter, energy, space, and time, the MEST, which is the backdrop, right? Now it's informing our present because this is what we're made of, matter, energy, space, and time. Now we make matters of concern and energetically, emotionally interject that affects our spatial context and the quality of relationships and our use of time, whether it's a good time, well spent or invested time. This is something that I feel is worthwhile to explore because it informs the quality of our life. And the conjecture of creating a life of ultra being, being at the peak of one's capacity, their ability to be present and have the sense of I-awareness of their own internalized meaning and association of things, which is the flight we take every day, TWA. Thoughts, words, and actions. How else am I going to know you unless you're able to express this and how you're feeling through your thoughts, words, and actions? And how things show up and become actualized or materialized in this messed world is kind of then informing this Welt Slosh, which is our being here in the present. We're coming to a recognition of being in this world. Now, there's some agreement to this, particularly in traditions, language, nation building, all these kind of things in that essence that create our traditions, right? And our colloquial way of being, whether it's our mannerisms and just sort of the way that we get along in our commonality. This type of spirit is explored in more of an immediacy of presence that I describe as a metasphere, sort of the atmosphere between us. But let's define it as a metasphere. Because, yeah, it's meta, but I had this word long before that, where we're talking about, metaphorically speaking, what is this that's felt between us? What's the climate of our relationship or the quality of this conversation and dialogue? And where is it going to or where is it stemming from? These are open explorations, and not that we have to be tied to these identities because I want to be free of this idea, this internal dialogue. But my work is about being a bit more aware of this. So in the Welt Slosh, which is talking about, literally my defining of it, is our world, sort of a way of being in this world, and the Slosh is our dwelling in the world. So yes, the German word literally means world building. And yes, we are in the building of something that's already been constructed, of reality, right? And then in the same sense, we're still building into it just simply by our being here and what we're adding to it through our TWA, our thoughts, words, and actions. And this way of being present is, you could say, deconstructing or adding or qualifying. If nothing else, it's treading water. And if we can just be still in our mind just for a moment to observe, as Krishnamurti would say, the observer observed. Now, what does this mean? Well, I'm having a sense of myself, but I'm not necessarily meditating on my navel or sort of constructing things continuously in my mind. There's a simple sense of emptiness, and this kind of knowingness exists in the gap, and it's sort of very comforting because I'm open to things and I can observe it, but I'm also, if I'm catching it, free of judgment because it is what it is. And even if it's a thought about something, it's interesting. Now, how long you choose to dwell on it is part of the qualifications of existing in the messed world of dwelling. So the Welt slosh is really this exploration of how I'm being here in this world. What is this world that I'm really sort of processing, right? And there's different dimensions of this because there's reflection of the roles that we play in the slosh, right? In this case, talking to my daughter as a parent and quote unquote as a pseudo philosopher and quote unquote wanting to induce critical thinking in our family space and environment to give this as a gift, which is its present moment, and appreciation for this relationship. This is all part of the Welt slosh exploration. And that's my third work on the Welt slosh, and I've only come up with this idea really sometime since the beginning of the year, so it's only literally a few months old where I've taken sort of a, maybe a slow dive into what this concept that I conjured up, calling it the Welt slosh. Now it's also, Erschlossenheit is that other word that I derived it from, so there's also the Erschlossenheit, and then the that I've added to this dimension. So let me explain just really quick about Erschlossenheit, which is the original German word that I took the slosh out of, Erschlossenheit. Because when I found it in my readings in philosophy, and so many great German philosophers, oh my gosh, you can just go down the H's. Literally, if you get a book of philosophy and just open up any page, in the last couple hundred years, a good number of them have been German, French. We have a few of our own, speaking of here in North America. But this sort of European predominance in this sort of thinking kind of goes deeper than just what our language is. So I thought that we need certain words to better comprehend what this sense of a deepening exploration of reality could be. And I'm talking about a reality, not sort of just a noun reality that a certain type of consciousness that's limited in perspective exists. Yes, I'm curious about it, and I write a lot about that, which is out there, which is projected illusion. And the character that's played in that, I call the ego, which we project into as a version of ourselves in our mind, whether it's a fantasy or playing out in the role of, hello, baby, how you doing? It's sort of, we're talking about ego instead of ego. So igoism.com lends into this because in this projection, I'm also in a version or a slice of this life of the Welt slosh because that is where my identity is living, right? I see myself as a certain way, and sure, it's constructed based on how I grew up and the certain elements that have contributed to my way of being, but certainly it's the projection from the outside that I perceive looking at me. How am I supposed to be in the way that I'm showing up? This is affecting the Welt slosh because my quality of the world that I'm living in seems to be directed by the way I'm perceived and the way I think I ought to be. Now that's curious to be examining this. So the ego is going to go deeper in this level too, but in the existence of the Welt slosh, which is the world that we're dwelling in, to be conscious of what we've built up to now, whether it's regarded as being useful, functional, and good, or other than this, that needs to be adjusted, modified, reformed, or utterly disdained and transformed. If we're talking about having an equitable, desirable, positive, sustainable future, which would be the gift, right? Something that we could build upon in this dimension, then we're talking about a Welt slosh that sort of is conscious of itself, because take the leap with me here, or go down the rabbit hole, your choice here, is that something profound exists if we sort of just give recognition. And this is what the is. It's sort of like having an epiphany or aha moment. So both Erschlossenheit, which, because again, we do not have the English word for it, is talking into a recognition of the recognition, something that's coming into being that's having a revelation. So it could be revealed, but you're just coming to the recognition of it, or it's revealing because you are conscious to it. So if there's this reckoning, as I define, I use the W on it, we're literally having, hopefully, this whole brain transformation occur because the reckoning is an elegant way to bring down the barriers of the past, what came between us. Please follow me here. That then became these divisions among us in society that perhaps were purposely done, and we could point fingers again to the outside, which would be the illusion, or we take mastery within and go, hey, I'm just not going to get tripped up by that anymore. I've evolved, I've changed, I've matured. This is transformation. This is the quality that I describe as ultra being, because we're a bit more present, a bit more loving, and a bit more attuned to what this is. And as Dr. Joe pointed out to me, in one sense, since he called me the gray wolf, and the different ways that I sort of, you could say, perform or show up, and how people might see me, call me a different variety of names or perceive me a certain way, it's through this filter. And it's sort of this dividing line of recognizing what's pristine, right? The gift of being present, right? Which is listening and being attuned and being empty, which is sort of being awake. Or otherwise, if I'm full with agenda or this repeated thought pattern, RTPs, repeated thought pattern, or maybe I'm affected, in a certain way where I'm at disorientation. So there has to be a semblance of coming back to center, and it's sort of an ability really to just sort of, be attuned to this. And the question of this and that is really coming out of judgment. I could have a quality standard for how I want to appear to you, to how I want to so lovingly resolve what this issue is that divides us in society. And yet I get shaken up, but at the same time, because I realize it's a mass trance, that it's the hypnosis of society, you can't be blaming anybody. Other than if you have this opportunity and you recognize it and you don't take it, well, here's the leap of faith. That if we could recognize that there is a world slosh, that there's a world that we're dwelling in, we're sort of making it up, we want to make the distinction between this and that. So the irk here, this realization, is that this is pristine, as Dr. Job said. This is all that there really is, right? The power of now, being here in this moment, and we can simply have the sense of this. And it's nothing other than perhaps maybe a little bit of appreciation and love. It is emptiness, right? And literally there's so many great teachers out there that talked about this, but even Dr. Deepak Chopra, just saying that live a bit more in the gap, which is the space between your thoughts. This is self-liberation. This is a way to self-uplift yourself. So you can shake it off, check your posture, your facial contour, how you're breathing, your shoulders. Take a breath. And then if you want an upper boost or another thing, just look up. Just look up, right? The semiotics of the moment, if you explore that whole dimension of how signs are revealed to us, and it's a reflection of things, right? And so it would be a reflection of your level of consciousness and how you're being present. And those that are lovingly present are expressing more of what this is, the pristine. And this is ultra being present. Anything that's talked about out there is that. And that is data and all those type of things. And that can be important to be looked at, but realize that you're looking at a screen like watching a movie in that case. Because what is pointed out there is something that's going to be defined, and yes, it can be examined and considered, and perhaps really, again, appreciated for what it is. But to be lost in what's viewed out there and to think that is real is living in illusion. And illusion is far worse than just illusion or hallucination, because you are the one alluding to it and then giving it power, giving it structure, and giving it the purpose it's playing in your life, whether it's good or not. So in this world slash dimension, we have this quality of having sort of this really exemplary moment of appreciation of here and now. So we're in this world, and this world is something a bit special because I can sit among a sacred circle of people, sort of an inner tribe. And those that recognize this as a teaching follow it as a path. And this is really what Ultra Being is about, UBE3. Ultra Being, an excellent example of enlightenment, and it's a practice. I theoretically have it, and I've conjured it because I've studied it, and to some degree modeled it from some really great teachers, if not masters and gurus, those that really were loving in heart, and in that moment were able to present something that was a great teaching. This is self-liberation, helping other people get out of their own story. It's not about selfishness, right? It's not about any other undertaking. This is certainly the opposite of the vlog, which is affecting that. When I say affect, it's because it's alluded to. And the effect then is sort of a mirror reality because we begin to live in illusion. And the VALAG, V-A-L-A-G, is simply just comprehending that we have to be cautious of how this ID, this internal dialogue is presented in the ego, how I'm projecting my identity, because the VALAG could show up in the way of vanity, right? I don't want to become narcissistic. This isn't about me. This is about love. This is about being of service and having a purpose and doing a very deep work. World slash then is this recognition of existing within the slosh, which is this quality of dwelling that we can have the power to adjust, modify, change, and that could simply be cleaning up the mess, right? Having less of those matters of concern. It's awakening out of the mass trance, because this matter then has become more of a brain appreciation, where it's sort of like, hey, matter is what it is, and if what matters to you is to have this awakening, then we can have sort of an enlightened, conscious community conversation on this level to examine the world slosh and what this is about. Oh, I want to go on, but I'm at the 15 mark and I want to be considerate towards your time. So one more minute here, please. If this is of interest to you, the bottom line is that this is really the examination